Chekhov's characters certainly are, by Louise Wynn. Setting, an art gallery on the second floor of the Chemist Public Library, summer 2024. Characters, narrator, Uncle Vanya, Sonia, Vanya's niece, Pavel Chekhov, no, not Anton, the one from Star Trek, Lieutenant Chekhov. Margaret Atwood, yes, that one, Margaret. At open. Vanya and Sonia stand in the gallery, glancing around at the walls, squinting at the photographs from the local photo club's annual display. They are alternately frowning and laughing. But even when they laugh, they don't seem very happy. On the other hand, judging by the vertical creases between Vanya's eyebrows and the slumpy posture of Sonia, they are probably never happy and never have been.
I just read reviews of one of those new plays.
Dearest Uncle Vanya, please be more specific. What new place? Where? As you must certainly know, there are so-called new plays coming out in theaters all over the world, all the time. There's no such thing as a non-season anymore. I, for one, am sick of it. Sick, I say.
My dear, no need to be so emphatic. I am talking about the Uncle Vanya moment that some critics say I have to go to the V on. And I know you know that's what I'm talking about.
And I know that you know that I know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to introduce a little je ne sais quoi into our conversations, which, as I'm sure you noticed, are breathtakingly boring. One might say
I'm
deadly
interrupting
boring.
you
One might say
right now. My dear Louise, whom I love so very much, and whose occasional spouting of pretentious French expressions I find quite endearing.
that won't work, my handsome Uncle Vanya. I suppose you don't realize the extent to which everything you say here in this less than minimalist art gallery, in this very small library, in this tiny town that makes our village in middle of nowhere Russia look like a bustling metropolis.
Yes, my dear, I'm not interrupting you this time. You paused. Ran out of steam, am I correct? Forget what you were leading up to, as in all our conversations.
There is a sharp knock at the door. Lieutenant Chekhov enters, stage right or left, doesn't even matter. He looks around, surprised and speechless, looks at his wristwatch / transporter device, shakes his hand, shakes his head, glances sideways at Sonia, and then approaches Uncle Vanya, who is so busy stroking his Van Dyke facial atrocity that he doesn't even notice Chekhov.
Oh, hello? Hello? Who might you be?
Chekhov ignores the flirtatious Sonia and addresses Uncle Vanya, who looks down his nose at him before remembering his Russian upper-class manners to smile graciously at his guest and reach his right hand out towards Chekhov's right hand and his left hand towards his elbow. He takes Chekhov's right hand and pulls him in close, cupping his elbow, to bring their faces uncomfortably close. Chekhov keeps his own hand at his side, which makes for a very, very uncomfortable moment.
I appear to be lost. Could you help me find the Enterprise?
Certainly, my good man. I believe our village, small as it is, has several enterprising fellows who might be extremely helpful.
Uncle Vanya, the man is clearly not an enterprising kind of fellow. I believe he's a sinner?
Chekhov glances at Sonia and nods, which she takes as encouragement to move closer to him. He edges away from her and speaks to Vanya again.
If you could tell me the time?
We are approaching the time for supper. Would you like to join us?
And the year?
That is more difficult. From my clothing and my ridiculous goatee or whatever this bit of facial hair is called, and from my niece Sonia's deep green velvet dress, which covers her arms and reaches all the way to her feet, but leaves her bosoms almost entirely uncovered.
Chekhov glances at Sonia's bosoms, blushes, turns back to Uncle Vanya, who continues talking, never allowing a gesture or even a clearing of the throat of anyone else in the room to interrupt him, because he has found that talking is the best. possibly the only in his vast experience of...
Okay, buddy, just get to the point, would you?
The narrator shoots an ugly look towards Sonia. Sonia is in what in other more vulgar times than this 21st century American library, art gallery, and more vulgar places than her own 18th century Russian Tsar's village would be called. Oops, sorry. I can't make myself say the actual word, so I'm stuck with calling her the B word.
Really an unpleasant person, aren't you?
You would say so. I would not, if I may continue. Uncle Vanya likes to talk. That is the way he has learned to control his small world. He talks and talks and talks.
And so do you?
Margaret Atwood entered. Stage right or left, whatever. At least she, unlike Lieutenant Chekhov, knows what she is doing here. She starts laughing. She laughs and laughs and laughs until she runs out of breath.
I'm not laughing. Since when did stage directions mean dialogue spoken by a robotic narrator?
The narrator's feelings are hurt. They are only trying to maintain an illusion of order, and the narrator must admit control over a situation which borders on the edge of a kind of boring lack of control. Because this is how the Russian aristocracy used to live, is it not? Standing around in their dashas, having boring conversations about how boring their lives are.
Yes, needling each other with their unhappiness, their misery, drinking themselves silly while complaining about how bad the liquor tastes. And so...
And so what?
Oh, precisely. Are we going anywhere with this? Because I'm charged by the word, or in the case of stage plays, by the minute. So, let's get going, shall we?
Dead?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me of the one thing an ignoramus like yourself thinks you know that distinguishes citizens of the U.S. from citizens of Canada, eh?
Excuse me. I believe I have my bearings. I have consulted my watch/transport device. I mentioned that to keep the narrator from having to say it. You are welcome, narrator. I believe I am in a subset of the 4th Star Trek movie.
Ah, yes! The one where Dr. McCoy makes biting commentary on the medical practices of the 20th century.
Ah, there. See, we have some progress.
Please, if this is progress, then I am severely...
Yes, you indeed are.
If you will all excuse me, I will step outside now.
Chekhov exits, stage, whatever. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. There is absolutely no reason for his having appeared on the stage. No reason whatsoever.
Oh, yes there was.
And the others don't even notice that he has left. Except Sonia, who is so desperate for a relationship with...
Oh, you can just shut it!
The sound of a spaceship whining into another dimension or through the sound barrier or whatever spaceships do cut off what Sonia was saying, which is just as well because no one, that is to say, nobody, cares what Sonia has to say about anything.
My uncle cares. Don't you do? Hold on.
Vanya turns reluctantly away from the gilt-edged mirror in which he has been inspecting his exercible mustache and beard, or whatever he calls his facial hair.
Yeah, I do care, my dear Sonia. What was the reason for the spaceman's appeal?
A plot point.
There is sudden silence. Vanya and Sonia stare at Margaret Atwood, appalled at her rude interruption. She doesn't care. She's really getting tired of this whole Russian, dismal, boring conversation thing, so she repeats.
A plot point. I am guessing, Sonia, that you think otherwise. I am thinking that you believe Lieutenant Chekhov's appearance to have been inserted here to demonstrate your private life, your potential for love, your hope for a real life beyond the walls of his ugly house at the edge of these pointless woods. I would never say such a thing. Of course you wouldn't. That's beside the point. As you may or may not be aware, I am now the doyen of Canadian and indeed of all North American literature. And so I may say whatever I like, whenever I like. I am in my 80s now, so people think I have something to say. Something they need to know.
Oh, for Pete's sake! You are as boring as the rest.
What
invited you here anyway?
Well, that's beside the point. I'm here, and I will teach you about dramatic scenes, like it or not. B-word.
But my dear, there is no reason to be unkind. She is, after all, well preserved for such an old specimen.
I can hear you. You realize that, don't you?
Oh, yes, we do. And I'm guessing you're now going to give us a little lecture on the acts that appeared in the first act.
Oh, no, my dear. Everyone has already heard of that. That gun, that is.
Too bad. I have an axe somewhere around here. I would so love to bring it out and chop at anyone or all of you, and would not wait for the third act.
You are such a dear thing, narrator. No, that is so old hat. Everyone has done the gun, the axe, those axes, whatever, to death. I'm going to give you a little lecture. Character arc. Which, as you may know, Anton Chekhov, not that one, but the real one, knew more than a bit about character art.
And-
Arc.
And what, dear woman, is my character arc?
That's the interesting thing. You go from being bored in your life of quiet desperation to watching your niece, Sonia, try to flirt with a man who doesn't want to talk to her, to talking to me, a writer, who has probably even more to say than you do, and I could talk forever.
But please don't.
Not to worry, my little nobody.
No, I hate to interrupt, but that's not much of a character arc for me.
Precisely my point. You have essentially no character arc. Your niece, Sonia, on the other hand, has one.
I didn't want to hear this.
But you must, because here you are, with me, and your uncle, and this ridiculous narrator person, and I have heard no stage direction for your exit.
That's right. Lay it on her, lady.
Your character begins all vapid and vaporous, bored and boring, suddenly becomes interested and interesting when the spaceman enters, and then goes back to you as you were before, an arc of sorts. But Chekhov wasn't really that much for character arcs.
Thanks. At least I can say it was at least I can say it's the playwright's fault, not mine.
My dear, you don't get it at all, do you?
Are we done here?
Not quite. I would like to delve into your character, if you had one. Are you going to say that I'm chuckling?
I would not dignify what you were doing with any kind of description.
Very wise, and yet you go from being an idiotic know-it-all who wants to control the movements and words of the characters to realizing you have no control over anything, to a sad realization that you have no real place here except to tell the others what to do, and to let the audience in on what the others are thinking, and so on.
Then I am the most important character here.
Indeed you are! And now, my dears, I must leave, as I'm going to an Uncle Vanya revival on Broadway.
Why would you do that?
Oh, very good question.
Lights down, end of play.